Ninja games. Who doesn't love ninja games? Let's face it, we all secretly want to be ninjas, and we all secretly do have one favourite ninja game of some sort or another. So to celebrate everything that is the ninja, we are going to be going over some of the very best, worst and most obscure ninja games of the 8 and 16-bit era. So sit back, get comfy, and we'll both take a walk down memory lane and have a look at some games that you may and may never have heard of, all based around the theme of the ninja. This is one where I'm sure we all pretty much started to love the ninja. The Master System port of Shinobi on the Master System console. A game which is hard to master and that really does require the skills and patience of an actual ninja in order to complete it. The game was changed slightly for the Master System release, as originally in the arcade version it was a case of one hit meant you were dead and that you had to start right from the beginning of the level again. For the Master System port, Sega would add a health bar and brand new items such as grenades and knives, which would help you complete the game and make it that much easier than compared to the arcade port. Nope, I am not making this one up. It actually did happen. If you don't believe me, use any search engine and check for yourself. Sega did indeed allow Shinobi to be ported on the NES console. It really did happen. As I've said before, check it out if you do not believe me. I too was shocked and could not believe Sega that allowed this, considering that this was a game that they made and it was also released for their Master System console. The NES version of Shinobi is a very different game to that of the Master System version, and that the gameplay is a lot slower and all the weapon mechanics have been changed as well. In the NES version, all the weapons such as the swords and all the various others are gone, and you can only really use close range kicks and stabs when close to an enemy, and you can also only ever use one throwing star at any single one time. The NES version of Shinobi was released by Tengen exclusively in North America as an unlicensed release in 1989, and whilst it exists and it is quite rare among collectors now, I really would struggle to say that it is actually good though. Who doesn't love the Ninja Turtles? And when I say the Ninja Turtles, I of course mean the real Ninja Turtles, and not the eyesore that was created by Michael Bay. The 16-bit consoles would get two versions of the Ninja Turtles, and while both had similarities, both were oddly very different. The NES version of the Ninja Turtles was Turtles in Time, and it was very good, and it was very close to the arcade port as it could have been for the system's limitations. Some of the things were changed ever so slightly, but for the most part this was an extremely good game and a very good port that did an exceptionally good job of creating the arcade experience at home. The third game in the trilogy of Ninja Gaiden saga would see you be framed for murder that you didn't commit and then go out for revenge. This time around our hero has gone to a lab filled with ninjas and monsters, and he's then going to hack and slash his way through till the very end. I'm sure anyone out there who did have a NES will have had at least one of the Ninja Gaiden games on that system. And while each one is packed full of hours of entertainment and enjoyment, there is a bit of a murky history with Ninja Gaiden 3. The North American release of the game is oddly made harder than that of the Japanese release. The game had stronger enemies, gave you less continues, and even removed the password system. I'm not sure why this was done. Maybe the people who ported the game thought that the North American version needed to be harder, but if anything, it just took away a lot of the enjoyment the game had. Shinobi 2, or the Cyber Shinobi as it's also known, is a pretty bad game. I will just be honest and upfront about that right from the very start. The game takes everything that the first Shinobi game had, which made it a highly great and enjoyable experience, and then just completely ignores all of it. The game is exceptionally slow, it's sluggish, the controls lag, and the animations seem as if each character only has 2 frames per character individually. The game is also very easy as well, and it feels as if you could complete it without really putting any effort into it at all. I really do want to say something good about the Cyber Shinobi, but I am struggling, because the sad truth of the fact is that if this game didn't have the Shinobi tagline, I don't think many people would have even bothered or noticed this game. It's not an awful game, it just feels as if there's little to no effort put into creating it whatsoever. Our next Ninja Turtles game on the list is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Hyperstone Heist. This would be the Mega Drive version of the arcade game, only it isn't. Well, yes it is, no it isn't, sort of. The game would be released several months after the SNES port, and the story and gameplay have been changed rather a lot. While some elements from Turtle in Time from the SNES are here in this game, such as the intro with April O'Neil at the Statue of Liberty, everything else was different and changed and improved upon. Now the gameplay is much faster due to Mega Drive having a faster processor than the SNES, it had more enemies on screen at once, the levels were completely different, and instead of the story being about the Turtles time travelling, this was about Shredder using some type of power stone. Also, just an odd bit of trivia here, in Japan the game also isn't known as Hyperstone Heist, but is instead known as Shredder's Revenge. If you bought Ninja Gaiden 1 for the NES, well, Ninja Gaiden 2 honestly wasn't that much different. It simply just felt like the very first game with new levels and a few new items. And really, that's not exactly a bad thing because the first game did exceptionally well. So just like the old saying goes, if it isn't broken, then don't fix it. If you did enjoy the first Ninja Gaiden on the NES, then you would have enjoyed the hell out of the second, because it was simply more of the same. It gave you a great story, it gave you great characters, it gave you great levels, and a whole lot more. So there isn't really anything to complain about with the game's sequel. Shadow Dancer would get 2 ports on the Sega consoles, the Mega Drive version and the Master System version. I will give credit where credit is due, and the Master System does do a good job of trying to recapture the arcade version's appearance, only it does not do it very well at all. The graphics are awful, vision is limited, gameplay is slow and sluggish with unresponsive controls, and one of the big selling points of the game being your trusty dog companion, well, he isn't even by your side in the Master System port, which just seems kind of pointless. Enemies would also come across looking rather strange too, as I've literally no idea why some of these guys are in green and coloured like they're the Incredible Hulk. It might have been a good idea in theory and on paper, but trying to port the arcade edition of this game into an extremely limited system such as a Master System console, it did not come out so well. Another strange one here, and I don't just mean yet another Ninja Turtles game on this list, but instead it's a case of the same game, but that it's very different. The Mega Drive and SNES would get the Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighter released on both systems, however both would be very different from one another, and not just with its story, but also its exclusivity with the characters. For example, in the SNES version of the game, you could play as the Shredder, Chrome Dome or War. These characters were not present in the Mega Drive version, and instead you could play as Casey Jones, or, oddly, April O'Neil, who does wrestling moves. Well, it's different, and it certainly is interesting to say the least. Shinobi returns this time for the Mega Drive system, and it's boosting brand new graphics, amazing music, deadly baddies, and dangerous as hell bosses. This game really is a prime example of taking something that was great and then adding onto that to create a better experience. The Revenge of Shinobi has so many great and memorable moments to it, be it from stages such as the rural village or the busy motorway stage. The levels are the type that stay with you and that you don't forget. What's even more insane about this game is that it has boss characters which consists of gangs of ninjas fighting together, you then have samurai masters, and, as strange as this may seem, Godzilla and Spider-Man. Yes, I did just say Godzilla and Spider-Man. If you don't believe me, check that up for yourself. It really is just crazy how this game turns out to be more insane the more you play it. Sega's Master System console would see a port of Ninja Gaiden, But oddly, this game for that system looked and played so much better than what it did on a NES console. Everything looks and feels so much better, it's been improved upon in practically every way you can imagine. The game's graphics look much more colourful, characters are bigger, stages look better and well laid out and designed. It's just a case of a game being a huge improvement over the NES version, and it makes you wonder, if anything, why Temco didn't make more Ninja Gaiden games at a Master System console. It really is a good game, and if anything, I would say it is on par with the Master System version of Shinobi. If you really do want some great ninja games for the Master System console, you really cannot go wrong with the Master System version of Ninja Gaiden. The SNES version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighter, well, as I've already said before, this game was very different when compared to the Mega Drive edition of the game, and whilst both games kept the same basic fighting mechanics, both came across as being a very different experience indeed. For this version, we could play as a Shredder and a few other characters exclusive to the SNES console that were not available in the Mega Drive edition, and whilst that is good, I would say that it's also kind of bad as well. I myself am quite lucky, as I had a Mega Drive and I also had a best friend who at that time also had a SNES. So we were able to buy both versions of the Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighter game as kids, and as a result, we both had copies of the game, which meant we could enjoy both versions of that said game. However, that is not the same for everyone else out there, and if anything, Konami doing this just felt a bit of a slightly scummy thing to do. Both games were very different, but really, both games were supposed to be the same. So, making some characters exclusive to one console over the other just made you feel as if you were slightly getting screwed over one way or another by Konami. The Mega Drive port of Shadow Dancer was for some reason changed from how the arcade edition was. Instead of starting out in an airport like what you do in the arcade edition, you instead started out in a burned out city. Other levels after the first were also changed, but for the most part the story and the game was the same. The game was also incredibly hard, as like how the arcade edition of Shinobi was also as well, because this game brought back the one hit equals death element, and that really was quite unforgiving and harsh, as a lot of the time the game really does literally give you no other option except to jump into the jaws of death and hope for the best on if you're going to survive or not. Your good game continues whilst doing the special stages, but really, a lot of the times it really did just feel like a luck of the draw on certain things that the game forced you to do if you were going to make it to the end of the level. Whilst I did highly enjoy the game, and even today think that this game is a great experience and a brilliant game to the Shinobi series, I really do think the game would have been a lot better if it had a health bar system like how Shinobi did when it was ported to the Master System consoles. Shinobi 3 was, in my opinion, the best Shinobi game ever made. It was fast, had loads of levels, had an amazing soundtrack, it had big bosses, and even big bosses such as Mechagodzilla. The game's got loads of things to love about it, the jam-packed battles, the robot fights, the horse riding, the electronic surfboarding, the graphics, the animation. There really is just so much to love about Shinobi 3, as it takes everything that Sega has learned from the past games and puts them into this one, creating one hell of an epic experience. Shinobi 3 is an amazing game, which from the very moment that you boot it up on the Mega Drive console to the very end of completing it, will just leave you with your jaw on the floor. I really have nothing but praise for this game, as it really is one of my favourite ninja games of all time, and I can guarantee that if you out there play it yourself, you will pretty much come to the same opinion. Strider 2 on the Master System is, well, I would say that it requires a hell of a lot of patience to master it. I personally do not like the game at all, as I find controlling the main character is about as enjoyable as what I would expect an accident on a roller coaster would be like. The controls are clumsy, like a bear trying to open a jar of honey whilst wearing oven mitts, and the gameplay mechanics are about as broken as a glass bottle to the skull. The Mega Drive version is a vast improvement over the Master System edition of the game, but honestly, not by much. Some people out there do like this game, but I find it hard to see why. Imagine, if you will, if you took the idea of the Contra series, but instead added ninjas, as that's essentially what this 2D side-scroller is like. You'll be going from level to level, fighting off hordes of enemies, gaining several power-ups, and fighting bosses. It's got a wacky plot, with aliens coming from outer space and destroying the Earth, until two brave ninja warriors appear from the shadows and face off against the alien invasion. The game, whilst being highly enjoyable, is also very hard to master, and also in the later levels, some of the enemies are quite powerful and can be rather unpredictable in their movements and attack patterns, essentially meaning that every time you play, you always are going to be on your toes. If you love fighting hordes of enemies together, big explosions, huge boss battles, and over-the-top special moves, robot armies, monsters, and ninjas, then you have to give Ninja Warriors on the SNES a try. This is one of the very best ninja games that the SNES console had, that consists of you selecting one out of 3 characters, and then going off to fight off against an evil dictator who's trying to take over the world. Indeed, this game is so good and highly enjoyable that it even got a remaster made in 2019 that's available for the PS4 and Switch. I really do wish that this game was available for PC gamers, however, but sadly it isn't. But it really is a good game, and while staying true to how great the original is, it just adds so much more to it. It's a great game that even back then was brilliant, but in a remake just makes everything so much more bigger and better, and just a highly great and enjoyable experience. It really is a case of taking something that's great and making it 30% greater. If you're an anime fan and like ninjas, silly stories, and funny characters, then you are going to enjoy this one. It is a ninja game, which is quite different to most, and is a mixture of RPG, action, and adventure. The game is really fun and never takes itself too seriously, which is just one of the many things that I personally like about this game's story. It's quick, very easy to get into, and you'll very quickly lose yourself into it, so if you haven't heard of this ninja game before, then you should check it out and give it a try. It is quite different, it is quite original, but it is highly enjoyable. Shinobi would appear on the Game Gear handheld, and with this installment it takes many looks and features from the Mega Drive version of Revenge of Shinobi, but in this installment we see our resident ninja Joe going off on a quest to free his kidnapped ninja allies, and then with each one working together so they can destroy the City of Fear. This really was an excellent ninja game, especially considering that it was on a very limited system such as the Game Gear handheld. And back then, playing a ninja game like this on such a small, tiny and blurry screen, it really did require you to learn the ways of the ninja in order to survive. If you never have played the GG version of Shinobi, you have to give this one a go. Shinobi returns on the Game Gear, and this time it basically is just more of the same. Just like in the previous installment, you'll be working to rescue of a fellow trapped ninja, whilst hacking and slashing your way looking for elemental crystals, which you'll need in order to face off against the evil Black Ninja clan, who's magically sprung up out of nowhere. The game really is just more of the same, and that's not really a bad thing because the first game was quite good, and you can't really complain about getting more of a good thing. I just wish that there was some slight differences to it, because the game, it does feel very close to what the original was. The ninja for the Master System might look rather crap upon a first glance. You might think that the gameplay looks rather simple, or too easy. You might wonder why the main character or other ninjas all seem to walk around as if they have possibly pooed themselves, or you might wonder why all the bosses are the same character. It could be a whole range of things. Yet, it is once you start playing this hidden gem of a game that you do realise its greatness is in its addictive gameplay. The more you play it, the more you want to beat it, and that's when you realise that this game has got you hooked. Don't go looking at this game thinking it's not that interesting or it just doesn't look that good, because once you start playing it, you'll realise just how enjoyable it is. Well, that's it for this video everyone. Sadly, not every ninja game from the 8 and 16-bit era could make it, as I simply don't just have access to every single one of them. I do hope that you did enjoy or possibly learn something from this video, and I hope to see you again in the future for the 32-bit era of ninja video games. Until then, stay silent, stay in the shadows, learn the ways of the ninja, please like, rate and subscribe, and I'll see you again in the next video.